Hi there, person in Gameland. Greetings, everyone.
Nice to have you with us. You ready for some hockey? He scores!
I think it's going to be a great year for the game.
Great use of the glove right there. What a save. Runs him over. Shoots! Score! Great scoring chance coming. Nice goal. Yeah.
Standing.
Ready to roll. Crystal clear. Can you hear what I'm saying, baby?
EA Sports. It's in the game.
4 words. 4 words that have defined a game, a design philosophy, and a developer for the better part of 35 years. In that time span, what started out as a company producing games named after sports leagues, well, they've gotten so big, they've now got sports leagues named after them and their gaming engines. Electronic Arts is not just one of the largest video game companies in the world. They're one of the largest entertainment companies in the world, holding larger market caps than the likes of Warner Discovery, Paramount, and even the Formula One group that they make the games for. We all know video games make serious money, and we also all know that a serious chunk of that money for EA comes from EA Sports. It's in the bank. But as the 9th generation of video game consoles nears its end, one trend is seemingly just at its very beginning. AAA video game titles taking a hell of a long time to make. As video game consoles have become more complex, so too has video game development. We've all joked about how the time between GTA 5 and GTA 6 is nearly old enough to buy a GTA game. Just stay alive, one more year. We've all seen our favorite games being remastered and remade to reprint the cash they brought along the first time. We've all said, damn, when even Ubisoft was like, I don't think we can make Assassin's Creed games every year anymore. And we've certainly all seen nearly each and every one of the major publishers go out and try to create the next big live service game and/or freemium skin selling platform. But what does any of this have to do with each new major feature from NHL 2001 to NHL 25? Comes down to one simple question. Is the annual sports game the next video game business model that will finally have to change? EA's NHL series serves as the perfect platform for this discussion in my mind, as there's been substantial evolution in its history. This series has gone on a roller coaster ride in respectability from era to era since the very beginning, going from pop culture icon right out of the gates to second best presentation merchants versus true competition, then back to revolutionary, genre-changing sports game of the year darlings, and then back to this just feels like a glorified roster update. We're still waiting for the 9th console generation to produce more generation-defining games, but for sports games, maybe that starts with how they're even released to begin with. Let's take a look, one game at a time, starting with console generation 6. For as much criticism as they deserve, annual releases aren't all that bad, as you do get to experience one of the best parts of being a fan of video games each and every year. The moment a game and all of its new features are finally announced. And you just gotta tell a friend about it. Dude, I just saw the NHL 2001 preview, and the faces look real. They look photo real.
Oh, brother, who's that on the logo? Jogger never did that move.
Before we judge and marvel that this being called real faces could have been considered anything but a huge stretch, some historical context is probably required. Moving from CDs to DVDs and the jump from PS1 to the PS2, that extra 4 gigabytes of disk space was used to usher in a new era of graphic fidelity, player models, and animations that were most certainly worthy of being labeled as new features in EA's NHL 2001. Much like many of the initial titles released in the PlayStation 2's first year, presentation jumps alone were seen as a major feature and reason for going out and buying a new console and all the games that go with it. So yes, the major new feature for NHL 2001 was the graphics update and was the presentation. It's a bit of a major theme for the NHL series for EA, and that'll become a problem moving forward, but more on that later on. More space on a disc also equals more megabytes to add more varied play-by-play commentary.
Nothing will frustrate a good shooter more than a great goalie who is really in the zone.
More ice sound effects.
Terrian turned inside out by Mironov to Lindros.
And as GameSpot put it on November 2nd, 2000 in their review, graphical updates that made NHL 2001, and this is a direct quote, I am not kidding, the most graphically advanced hockey game ever. No other hockey game even enters the same solar system. The player models are so lifelike that it's almost scary. Now, before we move on to NHL 2002, much like the format of video game reviews, the focus of developers can be broken down into three categories. First, presentation. Second, gameplay. And the third, modes. In an ideal world, all three of those areas would be worked on evenly in some kind of meaningful way. But the truth is likely that just one of those categories will receive the majority of the attention in that 12-month cycle. For NHL 2001, we'll label it as a presentation year for EA. So how do you follow up the act of creating the greatest looking hockey video game of all time, and now in an environment where you can't just hit fans or reviewers over the head with a generational graphic update? You double down on presentation. Yes, EA Sports added gameplay updates like variable puck control, saucer passes, and manual dekes, which meant you didn't just have to move funny with the analog sticks to shake people, but it was like an atmospheric immersion that EA decided to go with to have the game feel new just 1 year later. Additions such as the breakaway cam and the save cam might have completely disrupted the flow of the game and actually made it harder to score on breakaways, but they made the game feel like it actually had a personality of its own. And at that point in time, EA's personality is more arcade than sim, something they leaned further into as Generation 6 moved along. By the time that NHL 2003 came around, EA was looking at a pretty competitive landscape in the hockey video game market. The 2K series, developed by Visual Concepts, the team behind some of the most celebrated sports titles of all time, they were just starting to hit their prime. In Midway, they'd found great success with their arcade-focused NHL Hit series, developed by Black Box. More on them later. You see, both NHL 2K and NHL Hits presented a pretty serious threat to EA Sports' NHL franchise. On one hand, 2K was the place to go if you wanted a title that featured sharp gameplay that matched up closest to the real-life counterpart. It was the closest to a sim that you could get to at the time. While NHL Hits, that was just the most fun arcade hockey experience you could get. Huge hits, hilarious minigames, it was just the perfect representation of the sport for a casual fan. Honestly, even for hardcore fans. So where does that leave EA? Well, right smack dab in the middle of our ever so popular arcade sim sports video game spectrum. Before one developer made like the game for every sport, this was actually like a huge point of debate for people really deciding where they wanted to spend their money for the year. And honestly, it was a huge opportunity for developers looking to differentiate from one another. Well, EA Sports was no slouch themselves in the arcade sports scene, but I wouldn't say they were gigantic or, you know, titans. I would say that they were So when the battle lines were drawn in 2003 for the great sports hockey video game sales off, EA Sports looked to what had clearly been working for them. By that point, NBA Street 1 and 2 had come out and become successes, going on to wear the greatest badge of honor you could wear as a video game in that era. The Greatest Hits badge. That right there, that meant you was getting
Classics mode, which means they sell at a certain price but way more volume.
that Tony Hawk money. You ever hear about the checks they got from that?
Things are way bigger than you ever thought. And he handed me a check for $4 million.
Like crazy stuff.
One check from that game, $150,000.
But back to what we were saying. Naturally, to EA Sports, that success in the Street series, well, that meant it was vital that they took an integral part of NBA Street and randomly slapped it into NHL 2003 in a completely non-integral way. And thus, the Game Breaker took to the ice. Now, I'm being a bit of a jerk about this, as NHL 2003 was a great game with an incredible soundtrack. But the addition of the Game Breaker, dynamic beat control, and some form of comic mischief that I have yet to ever locate, the hell does that mean? EA Sports' third kick of the can, the PS2 generation, showed that the developer, while having made some great titles, perhaps they still had some higher gears to hit. So what do you do if you're looking to be competitive on the ice? Well, you work the phones, you make acquisitions in the summer.
Buy 'em out, boys.
And so, after developing two of the most memorable sports titles of the entire sixth generation in NHL Hits 2002 and NHL Hits 2003, Black Box Games were acquired and got to work on NHL 2004, EA's fourth title of the sixth generation. It is important to note that Black Box was already a gun for hire at this point, as they'd actually developed games for EA already with NASCAR 2001 and Need for Speed Hot Pursuit 2, actually as well as for 2K, making NHL 2K for the Dreamcast. And so, after a gameplay-focused year, Black Box got to work on doing the very same for NHL 2004, introducing Bruise Control, which led to much harder hits and a much improved fight system that, honestly, that's the very best of the series if you ask me. On top of being the first game in the series that allowed you to choose when to fight, it was also the first entry to feature Dynasty mode, as well as international leagues. Another series first, the ability to pass into open areas. In addition, that was huge at the time, as sports games were still dealing with that on-rails adjective. Something that'd be like, I never thought of that, it's like be pretty hard to explain because like sports games have been so fluid for so long. The only way I can think to describe it is like, imagine like finite lanes that, you know, your player would move through, whether on ice, on the field, or on the court, you know? They just travel through those. Anyways, you're lucky you don't have to deal with that now. One at bat, one home run for Black Box. And they did it in the same year as developing Need for Speed Underground? No. That's legendary. That was just the era thing that happened too. Cause like, can you imagine a developer making 2 major titles like that in 1 calendar year? This doesn't really happen. That's how much time some developers now spend on a 2.0 patch to make a game play like it was originally advertised. But again, yes, different era, different technical challenges. So despite 2 straight years of a focus on improved gameplay, EA's NHL series found itself as the second best show in town, at least when it came to gameplay performance. And to make matters worse, in 2004, their competition decided to not only further their claim as the best show in town, they also became the cheapest show in town. And a move that has not been replicated since, 2K took their premier sports titles, including NHL 2K5, and just priced them at $19.99. The Arizona Iced Tea method. The move was meant to help 2K eat into Madden's NFL market share, but when they delivered 2 classics, including On the Ice, it put EA NHL 2005 in a losing position from the start with the price, and just kept them there with a gem of a game, at least for the year. With a modes-focused development cycle, Black Box introduced the World Cup of Hockey mode as a main new feature, as well as the free-for-all mode that played kind of similar, funny enough, to NHL 1's. While on the gameplay front, they added open ice control, a system that allowed the AI to take control of the puck carrier so you could move into position off the puck. Think kind of like the lead block control or whatever it was called in Madden and NCAA football. But despite those additions, the game was still critiqued as too sluggish and too arcadey. 5 games into the 6th console generation, it kind of found itself in a lull. Evolution was needed. In 1993, Apple was on the very cusp of changing the world forever, releasing the Newton, a personal digital assistant message pad that famously featured a stylus. Speaking on its invention in 2008, Steve Jobs said, "This could have been the iPhone." Okay, so obviously he never said that, but he probably never said this line either from that Aaron Sorkin movie, but damn, did it sound like a great revelation on film.
It was the stylus, John.
What?
I killed the Newton because of the stylus. If you're holding a stylus, you can't use the other 5 that are attached to your wrist. Things we could have done together.
With NHL 06, Black Box was on the verge of a revolution of their own, something that would have changed how people played hockey games forever. And they just missed it. They were the ones to introduce the skill stick. But unlike the skill stick that we all know today, and the one that we all still use today, the skill stick in NHL 06, that just performed pre-can deking animations when pushed in certain directions. Like what? They must have been like working, obviously, on the next one, and they're like, oh yeah, let's put it in now. And clearly, Black Box, they went on to invent the Flick It system, which is also so cool, so revolutionary. Please change the art style back for Skate immediately, I beg of you. But back to NHL 06, unlike the removal of the 2-line pass rule in the 05-06 season, the addition of this skill stick, not a game changer. The momentum skating and the overhaul to the physics system made for a game that felt different, but it still didn't feel as fluid as NHL 2K6. So, as the 6th console generation came to a close, and the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360's launches were on the horizon, EA Sports was looking to take an even bigger swing with their skill stick.
The changes in this year's game are huge. The evolution of the EA Sports skill stick in NHL 07, what the developers have done, it's changed hockey games forever. If you're just sitting at home waiting to call your friend about this, I don't know what more you're waiting for.
I gotta tell Sam about this. Ooh, I don't have any daytime minutes left. Is he my My5? Yeah, I'll text him. Have you. So after the NHLPA reportedly signed an exclusivity deal with Electronic Arts in 2005, there's a lot of worries that it spelled the end for the 2K series. The NHL eventually nixed that deal, but Electronic Arts, they called game in 2006 anyways, setting 2K on the path to hockey retirement with the introduction of the EA Sports Skill Stick. Out of every main new feature on this entire list, like this one counts as a true game changer. Not just in EA's games, but across all hockey games. Like, think about it. After decades of pressing buttons to shoot, pass, and deke, EA Canada, just scrap that. Giving us a Steve Jobs like, are all of you stupid, or am I just really an angry person?
You spent all your money on it and developed a grand total of no new products.
Whatever it was, they designated player movement to the left stick and stick movement to the right, with passing and player selection now making use of the triggers. It took all of those half steps that both EA and 2K had taken towards using the analog sticks at some point or another, just fully committed to it in an intuitive way that fundamentally changed the way that the average player even thinks about playing a hockey video game anymore. Except for Jesse, he still uses hybrid. Might as well just use buttons. I'd never see him actually use the stick part, so it's not really hybrid. But the game, while it pushed things forward, was not without its faults, as the animations looked hilariously janky, and there was more clipping than at a Charlestown flower shop. But as IGN put it in their review of the game, quote, NHL 07 represents the first truly next-generation gameplay innovation. And they were not just talking about hockey games, they were talking about all sports games. It was head and shoulders above the rest in that department. So for their next-generation follow-up act, the next iteration, that focused on really perfecting the gameplay formula that they'd laid out. Introducing things like one-on-one dekes, a brand new skating engine that better mimicked real-life skating physics and made for a much smoother playing game, while also greatly improving the AI to pick up on the player's tendencies, allowing the computer to change their tactics on the fly. And that's why we're gonna call it on-the-fly AI. And that's what I imagine the person who was working in marketing, that's how they said it as soon as they made the connection. Naming gimmicks aside, for 2 video game console generations in a row, EA's NHL series followed a certain pattern with the first 2 titles. The first one, brought about a feature that exemplified a true generational shift, while the second took that shift and ironed out the weaknesses in a way that made the second game feel like the polished version of the first game. So 2-year cycles, yeah. It's almost as if, call me crazy here, these games should be placed on a 2-year cycle. Yeah, that's making the board for now. Let's see how year 3 of this console generation goes. How do you define success in the video game market? Is it sales? Is it critical acclaim? Is it fan reception? It's sales. Sales is definitely the correct answer, and the only answer probably, at least if you're the publisher or the developer. You gotta sell the game if you want to see a new version of the game. Please go buy Alan Wake 2 so I can see Alan Wake 3. I love that game, it's so good. But it's sales. But let's pretend for a moment that the answer came from a much higher calling, one that arrived after you opened a ripping cold Mountain Dew, looked under the cap, and realized it was time to get dual XP in Modern Warfare 2, but not before you engage with something with far more product placement. The Spike Video Game Awards, or just the Video Game Awards now. The place where NHL 09 began EA's dynasty. Jack Black might have been the main character at the 2008 Video Game Awards, but in NHL 09, you, the player, were the main star of the show. Seeing the success that expanded Be a Pro modes had brought to both the Madden and NCAA football series, EA Canada, they revamped the mode in NHL 09, going so far as to have the game actually start with you creating a player. Yes, the game also introduced improved gameplay with the addition of the flip dump pass and an updated collision system that led to extremely satisfying hits, but it was the Be A Pro that served as the primary edition, at least on the box, as it also ushered in another mode that is still core to the franchise's success to this very day. And that, of course, is EA SHL, or eShol, which I can't say I've ever called it that. An online mode that allowed you to team up with your friends to form your very own player-controlled team. It's like a brilliant mode, and in hindsight, this feels like it could have been that, 2K My Player moment that they were actually waiting for with the NHL series. Yeah, something that's like so good and so fun that maybe it does get mainstream appeal and, that broader success to really help with the series. But alas, that is not how that worked out. Still a great mode though. So after years of being nominated and falling short to Madden, NBA 2K, and Tony Hawk, EA's NHL series finally took the award for Best Sports Game of the Year from Spike, and from 11 other outlets that year. But more importantly, from Spike, the show that awarded Madden 2004 as Game of the Year in 2004. I'm not kidding, by the way. That's a real thing that actually happened, and it won over such forgotten titles as, and again, also not kidding, GTA Vice City, Legend of Zelda, The Wind Waker, Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, Tony Hawk's Underground, and the OG Tom Clancy's Splinter Cell, something that defined an entire genre. And the weirder thing is, it didn't even win Sports Game of the Year. But I digress. EA's NHL was on top, and they did not stop their progression. While it might be easy to mistake the incredible addition of the 3D rally towels as NHL 10's top new feature, it was, come on now. It probably was the rebranded GM mode that set the game apart from its predecessor. On the gameplay side, EA, they added board play, post-whistle plays, the ability to hit the puck out of the air, and the ability to hit someone in first person. So despite ditching the Dynasty branding, NHL 10 was the game that cemented the series' console Gen 7 dynasty, taking home Sports Game of the Year for a second year in a row at the Video Game Awards. Fun, intuitive, and refined gameplay, robust, fleshed out modes, all of this just leading fans to ask just one question. Is it 3 years that should be on top of our sports video game business plan leaderboard? I think it is. So as with any dynasty in sports, you're bound to see a regression to the mean as a new era is ushered in. And as fate would have it, NHL 11 certainly did mark the start of a new chapter for the series, finally introducing EA's wildly popular cash printing, pack ripping, gold coin dipping, diamond hand stack flipping Ultimate Team mode. The very financial engine that all EA Sports games likely run on now. Originally introduced as a DLC for FIFA 09, the Ultimate Team mode not only took EA Sports' pockets to a whole nother level, it managed to lift sports video gaming to a much wider audience, arriving at a time that content creators began to emerge, helping to create a community that was just fully hooked to this mode. I mean, they ingeniously did mesh two of the most popular hobbies in existence in a super organic way: card collecting and video games. It's not a mode for me, it never will be. The very nature of the microtransactions and loot box nature of the game has been discussed and dissected by many people, but one fact does remain. It did change the sports video game landscape into what we do see today, for better or for worse. I absolutely love nostalgia, but I'm not gonna be naive. Not naive enough to think that, video game development is some altruistic endeavor meant to just wholly satisfy fans like ourselves. It's meant to make money at the end of the day. And with Ultimate Team, EA Sports did exactly that. The way that every single major publisher has gone out and tried to recreate the financial magic of Fortnite, Ultimate Team has had the exact same effect on sports games ever since it launched. Probably done almost just as well by NBA 2K, albeit in a different way, but still via microtransactions. The challenge went from, how do I sell even more copies of this game each and every year, to how do I sell even more copies of this game, but also get you to keep giving me even more of your money throughout that single year. To be honest, that's just reflective of the gaming industry at large at this point. It's not just sports games. Make one game and then have people keep playing in it and paying in it. Oh, they also had the ability to grab a stick from the bench, and they cranked up the break stick frequency in NHL 11 too. But the cash machine thing, that, hut, that was the main new feature in NHL 11. I'm sure it helped the series moving forward. So NHL 12 continued the trend that the remainder of the 7th console generation would bring. A modes first focus in development as EA looked to give players more to do while refining gameplay versus reinventing. So while you could now jostle in front of the net, crash the crease, and take part in goalie fights, it was the short-lived Be a Legend mode that got the biggest marketing push, as well as the first ever Winter Classic mode. I don't want to get too far ahead, but I thought we'd see more like Winter Classics and venues like that in our current console generation, because you can just put way more in games now. I felt like that was the main feature of our current generation that's kind of struggling for an identity. But anyways, we'll get to that later. NHL 13, they did, bring their own improvements as well. NHL 13, it brought about the true performance skating system, giving players a better feel of explosiveness, momentum, and top-end speed. But it most famously introduced a mode that probably serves as the biggest paradox for those working at EA Canada. I know you're saying it right now out loud, or typing it if I didn't get to it and highlight it. GM Connected. The truly innovative and ahead of its time mode. It allowed for an online league in which all 30 teams could be controlled by actual human players, with a maximum of up to 25 users per team, meaning 750 different people, they could play in one league. It also provided 5 different ways for people to play those games and deal with any real-life potential scheduling issues. You could allow players to control their full team, like 5 players on the ice, have one person play their game versus the computer, have a human team versus a human team matchup, have someone just coach the game from behind the bench, or you could just, flat out sim the game. If Hockey Ultimate Team was just a digital recreation of people collecting cards, well, then GM Connected, that was just a digital recreation of people playing fantasy sports. It's a mode that EA deserves a lot of credit for, and sadly, a mode that EA, they'd probably be the first to tell you, not nearly enough people actually played it. Not enough for it to still be in the game. It's moments like these that I'm kind of half joking, but half serious, that I'm rooting for the success of the Ultimate Team modes, because you'd hope that, more revenue would allow for a larger budget, which would then allow EA to cater to both hardcore fans wishing to pour hundreds of hours into niche modes, and also to players pouring hundreds of dollars into popular modes. But again, I'll say, I am not that naive. I'm sure that money's getting you somewhere, probably not to GM Connected or to the single player offline modes, but I don't know, maybe at a car dealership somewhere, I'm sure. I don't know. But this brings us to the final game of the 7th generation. For many, a high point, the highest point in the NHL series. But also perhaps the best example of what you gain and what you lose, the start and end of every console generation. At this point in the timeline, NHL 14 was without a doubt the most complete hockey game ever created. One-touch dekes, big addition. A new collision system that took into consideration speed and size, also great. The inclusion of a fully revamped Be a Pro mode retitled Live the Life. That was EA Canada bringing out their own series, Infinity Gauntlet, and just placing every single one of the stones of what people wanted in their games into it. GM mode, GM Connected, ESHL, Hockey Ultimate Team, NHL 94 mode, NHL Moments Live, and most importantly, a gameplay engine that had been thoughtfully built upon and improved over the course of 8 iterations. NHL 14, it really was the most fully realized mode pack gameplay optimized edition the series had ever seen. But it was time to start all over again.
Capture the objective.
Daniel. Are you watching Headquarter B? Daniel.
Oh, dude, yep, sorry. Where are we going again? NHL 15 trailer just dropped. It looks so good. Can we leave this lobby? I'm garbage. Nothing sells a game, or pre-orders, more accurately, than a good summer presentation or a good trailer. While the graphical jump between console Generation 7 and Generation 8 wasn't quite as jarring as the jump between 6 and 7, it was definitely big enough that a visuals trailer alone was definitely enough to sell you on the vision. Unfortunately, visuals was the full vision for NHL 15. And remember we were just talking about how much was gained for players to enjoy for NHL 14 because it was at the end of the cycle? Well, yeah, NHL 15, it's the other side of that coin. Players were desperate to get a look at what next generation hockey looked like. And EA Canada, they delivered on that. A complete overhaul of the game's graphic detail, the lighting systems, the player models and fan models even. It made the game look unmistakably better and closer to real life than ever before. And the quasi-real-life versions of Doc Emmerich and Eddie Olczyk was definitely weird, but still brought forth a broadcast presentation that closely mimicked the real thing. This wasn't like a Watch Dogs situation. That game, as we all know, nothing like the trailer. NHL 15, it did look pretty much identical to that original E3 trailer, but it also had like absolutely nothing in it, like at all. ESHL, gone. Live the Life, gone. GM Connected, gone. Basic GM mode, also gone. Like it was genuinely shocking how much was missing from this game. It's like if you return to one of your favorite restaurants and you're just absolutely starving, and the reason that you went there is because, you know, the last time you went there had all the fixings, and when it was finally time to serve the food, they showed up, they gave you the most beautiful looking pasta dish, but it had like all of 5 noodles in it, and while you were going, what is this? Like, it looks great, I'm sure it tastes great, but like, where's the rest of it? They went full price still. Also, sidebar, and I don't want to just keep ripping on this game, we have a full video of that, but like, what happened to box art? Look at this. This isn't the back of a video game box. This is a legal document.
Your Honor, I'm not here to try my worst. All right, settle down, everybody.
We were spoiled. Look at that. All these features and stuff. Like, what is that? There's just one picture on the back, and there's just like text, and I get it. Like, digital copies. No one buys the physical. You know how hard it was to find physical copies of all these games? The guy at the game store literally thanked me for buying them. He was like, no one is coming for these. Thank you. You've done your community service. But again, NHL 15. Once again, the start of a console generation had brought about a major improvement, but once again, EA, they paired it with a feature list that had fans asking, I thought it was in the game. We're moving on to NHL 16. And a number of game modes made their return, most notably ESHL. But you could also argue that the main feature of the game was the on-ice trainer. I know that probably comes out of left field because, you know, if you're watching this video, you probably don't use it. To long-standing fans of the series, it's nothing more than a feature to turn off when you boot up the game for the first time each year. But to casual fans who perhaps had watched the NHL series go from intuitive to intimidating from the sidelines, it's a welcome addition that was clearly brought in to assist in bringing in new players. 2 years in, a second title released, and yet another example that maybe a 3-year...
The game's been improved. If you owned NHL 15, you're happy with NHL 16. Think of the money we could be making.
No. 3 years is still feeling like the number to settle on right now. And like, what are you, Australian? It's 3 years, and NHL 17, it proves it. While we never actually got a Be a Ref mode that EA released a trailer for on April 1st, what we did get was the return of franchise mode. On top of that, deeper character customization options were also brought to ESHL. World Cup of Hockey mode made its return alongside the return of the real tournament, and a number of quality of life improvements were brought to the gameplay, including smoother pivoting and improved hitboxes and better puck pickups. NHL 15 brought the visuals, NHL 16 brought back those vital game modes, and NHL 17 made the whole thing a well-rounded product, all in 3-year cycle. NHL 18, it deepened what NHL 17 brought to the table in the way of modes, adding expansion to the franchise mix, allowing players to either play out the Golden Knights' entry into the league or create a team of their own with deep customization options that finally made a return in Gen 8. EA also added creative attack deeks, a much-needed defensive skill stick, and improved AI, again, which all in all, makes a 4-year cycle not sound all that bad. But once again, what we're left with is similar to the proposition of buying a new phone each and every single year. If you buy it, you're going to be purchasing an improved experience, no doubt, but you'll also be purchasing a pretty similar experience until the real changes are rolled out, or in this case, skated out. Real player motion skating. That was the next big new feature, and that sounds like absolute marketing mumbo jumbo. And yet, It's not. NHL 19 launched a whole new skating engine that completely changed the feel and responsiveness of the players. We honestly have Connor McDavid to thank for this, as the man was so otherworldly in his video game-like skating that they had to make the video game skating like him. Pair RPM tech with a once again improved collision system, a return to the great outdoors with World of Chell and Ones, definitely trying to tap into what NBA 2K has with my player, and overall what you got was a game that was wholeheartedly new, complete, and honestly purchase-worthy. I should clarify, a game being purchase-worthy does not mean that it's perfect, which NHL 19 is far from. A game being purchase-worthy, at least to me, is when the promised improvements and the level of fun are even to the price that I paid for that game. Something that is pretty difficult to do on an annual basis. Okay, so that game went well. That means we're about to get remixed marketing jargon, aren't we?
Thanks to RPM Tech 2.0, NHL 20 now looks, feels, and plays better up and down the ice.
Yeah, so you already know what the main new feature for NHL 20 was. It was RPM Tech 2.0. It's something that legit sounds like a weatherproof car mat that you'd find in aisle 34. But what it actually was number 34's signature shooting animations, as well as a number of other superstars in the league, as well as contextual shooting and better goalie movement. They also had a new broadcast team, one that includes Snoop Dogg popping up as a guest interview, even if you were playing in Mikkeli, Finland, playing under the bright lights of the Synergia Arena in front of 4,000 people.
Snoop Dogg, how are you, sir? Hey, baby, let me put these headphones on so I can hear what I'm saying.
So as console generation 8 neared an end, EA, they turned to an old trick that was tried and true. The revamping of a certain beloved game mode.
So, as you picture your path to greatness, what does it look like?
I feel like I was way too harsh on this trailer when it first came out, just because it didn't have like a lot of gameplay in it. But for what they were trying to do, trying to drum up excitement in their newly upgraded Via Pro mode, using Alexander Ovechkin's journey from Europe to the NHL as a parallel for the player, actually made a ton of sense. As for the first time in like maybe ever in the series, the European leagues were put to proper use in a major mode. As players, they could actually now start their careers overseas, before then traveling to North America to take part in what can only be described as this generation's top voiceless cutscene skipping simulator. I have not slapped an A button that hard since Professor Oak was yapping in Pallet Town. I don't care, just give me Squirtle and let me leave. But while the game's updated Via Pro mode was definitely the major new feature, especially as fans have been asking for something new with the mode since FIFA got the journey back in FIFA 17, the most notable addition to NHL 21, it was definitely the debut of the Michigan, alongside other various signature superstar moves. Toss in some more goalie updates, and you have another game that, while more complete, just didn't have the same feeling of a victory lap before the next gen jump as NHL 14, and it definitely did not have as good of a cover. I didn't like that then, and I don't like it now. You made some beautiful covers in the past, EA, but I do not think this is one of them. It should be noted that NHL 21 was developed during COVID, so that undoubtedly would have made for a more challenging development cycle, to say the least. But honestly, at this point, it was hard to not feel as if perhaps we were just at the peak of the annual sports video game burnout phase. Almost every video game series in existence hits some form of wall of fatigue at some point or another. And that's including game series that don't release each and every single year, feeling relatively similar each time that they do release. And while major graphical jumps and major innovations had helped the NHL series start off the past console generations on the right foot, Generation 9 was not doing anyone any favors, especially sports games.
400,000 king penguins. I mean, my hometown has less people than that.
The next generation.
That's actually pretty cool. I'm sure that was sick. That I'm gonna say was Sam.
It's almost organised. You've got that big swimming pool in the middle.
What is this again? So at this point, it's not even remotely controversial to say that console generation 9 has been pretty underwhelming. There have been some great games, no doubt, but for the large part, remakes, remasters, and remarkably disappointing attempts by every major publisher to take a crack at live service games. That's what's dominated this current console cycle. There's a reason that we've probably all seen the same types of comment after comment, calling PS5s the best place to play your favorite PS4 games, or the jab that PS5 owners are just PS6 testers. And yeah, that Xbox Series X 0-36 Mafia has a naming convention that's about as straightforward as Ilya Kovalchuk's curve. But what did EA Sports bring to the table that was new with NHL 22? The Frostbite engine, something that had been featured in both FIFA and Madden 4 years earlier, and X Factors, a gameplay feature that debuted in Madden 2 years earlier. Tough start. But as much as these weren't new features per se, they were steps forward for the series. Even if those steps were taken to play catch up. The new graphics engine meant better player likeness, improved player uniform details, better arena details, more accurate in-game lighting, 3D ice spray, and further enhanced stick physics. NHL 22 was far and away the most detailed entry in the NHL series to date. And yet, unlike in the jump from Gen 6 to 7, and then 7 to 8, it didn't quite hit you over the head with how different it looked. And with no new major modes or substantial gameplay features to speak of, it didn't quite lower that feeling of series fatigue that simply just set in further. By now, we know that game number 2 in the cycle usually gives EA the opportunity to reel people back in by reintroducing some of the, beloved game modes that were missing in the last one. But in a strange twist of fate, NHL 22 didn't really remove any modes. So scratch that move. Instead, NHL 23, it launched with a heavy emphasis on the new last chance puck movement mechanic, a brand new active Stanley Cup celebration cutscene, which is not to be underrated, people wanted that, as well as a whole host of other presentation upgrades, like improved crowd audio, varied pregame intros, and chrome helmets to go with mirrored visors. The reflection staring back at you, a game that once again kind of felt more like the expansion DLC that you get in RPGs like Fallout. Don't get me wrong, I like the robots in Automatron, but I need the new map, quests, factions in Far Harbor if I'm gonna feel satisfied. It felt more like the former than the latter, and it's year 3, so I think we know what's coming. And guess what we got in NHL 24, the third title in Generation 9. A brand new gameplay mechanic that genuinely made the game play and feel different from past iterations. The exhaust engine. With a sustained pressure system, EA took the term ice tilt and turned it into a reality. I guess a virtual reality. Making it so a team's momentum in the offensive zone now directly affected player fatigue. Positively for the offensive team, negatively for the team floundering on defense. It's a feature that's, far from perfect because it kind of encourages you to play in a very specific way, at least to play into the meta. And yeah, I get it. Most people are going to try and sustain pressure anyways, but still, it kind of does affect different team strategies. But nonetheless, the developers, they took a risk. And just like the QB vision cone, the rewind function, or even the breakaway cam, at the very least, it makes for a memorable entry in the series. Like, people hated some of the features I just said. Maybe all of the features that I just said, but you remember exactly what game those features came in, and I don't know, again, it's kind of part of really loving a series. But even with the risk, I will say that NHL 24 wasn't the best example of our 3-year development cycle really paying off, but it was another example of the third title doing the most to at least stand out in the series timeline. And speaking of timelines, we are nearing the end of this one. Firstly, if you are still here watching this video, you're a legend. Thank you. This has been a lot of fun to do, and I appreciate you being here on the nostalgia trip with me. Second, you are now a bona fide NHL series historian. You have sat through what can only be called a lecture on this series. But as a historian, you know what's coming up next. It's the 4th title of the console generation. We're getting that sweet quality of life update. NHL 25. The main new feature for NHL 25, Ice Cube and next-gen vision control, improved skating, lighting fluidity and animations to better replicate the modern NHL player, and improve AI that's able to empower itself to make better decisions on the ice. I'm not gonna go much further on that because I feel like, you know, I'm just speaking through a press kit or a technical document, and I think you get the point. And NHL 26, it very much seems like Ice Q 2.0 and Superstar X Factors. Those are gonna effectively be the main new features. I do like the nod to the World Juniors there. We wanted that in Be a Pro for a while now. But 5 entries into the much maligned Generation 9, and it's hard to put a finger on where things might be going with this series, or honestly, like with sports games in general. Development cycles are just proving to be longer, and fatigue with annual releases, it's never been higher. That feels true across nearly all sports games, even the ones that have been getting high ratings for years, and especially the ones that have not been getting high ratings throughout. Like, again, I'm sure you like sports games, but if you play other games, I'm sure you've been seeing, like, think of what people complain about in Assassin's Creed games, where they feel the same. The map is still completely different. The story is still completely different. If a series like that's having trouble, how long is having people reshuffle their hut and foot decks or their My Players really gonna sustain this model? And the answer might be infinitely. But as someone just like you who plays a lot of games, is on the internet and talks about a lot of games, I can't remember a time in which the dialogue around all these series has been like, man, what is next? As you can tell by me making a near 40-minute video on this subject, I clearly love sports video games and just video games in general. I love the NHL series, despite all of the criticisms that I have presented here or any other point. And just like many of you, I'm certainly guilty of being a jaded gamer who makes wholly unrealistic requests that are at a complete dissonance with reality as far as what's gonna actually enter these games in these 12-month cycles. And we do that because we love it. But you know what's worse than a jaded gamer who comes with a long wish list? Especially if you're a developer, a gamer who just stops caring. One of my favorite books of all time is The Data Detective by Tim Harford. In it, there's a simple but brilliant analogy on how time affects the way in which we perceive things. It starts with an observation taken from a study on how what we actually count as news can depend a whole lot on the frequency in which we pay attention to that news. And I think the very same can be said about updates to video game series. Now, in that book, there is an exercise. Draft the front page of a newspaper based on 4 very different timelines. Okay, so what would the front page of a newspaper look like on the EA NHL series if we were just covering this past year? Well, it'd just be NHL 25, with the main headline being something on Ice Q or Vision Control. Not particularly exciting. Now let's go to the front page of the last decade. Now we have the Frostbite engine, RPM tech, the addition of World of Chell, NHL 3s, a whole new Be a Pro and franchise mode, as well as a pretty sizable jump in the visual details being captured. Okay, and now for our 20-year newspaper. For that, I'd probably just place one image from NHL 2005 and one from the newest game, and then get an op-ed piece from a gaming journalist who maybe hadn't played the series since the early 2000s. That way they'd talk about signature animations and improved player models in a way that would probably come off as sorcery to them. There is no doubt that the hockey games of today are far improved from the hockey games of 20 years ago. That's not headline worthy. That's not the point I'm trying to make here. Despite what people say, not every single sports title is the exact same from year to year. We just went through this whole exercise. The games, they're different. Don't worry, not saying they should get a trophy for that either. But the leaps forward and the updates made by developers, it can create renewed interest from both casual and diehard fans. But as I've been saying since minute 1 of this video, getting the cadence right, that is the real challenge of it. Now, our board has had that 3-year cycle on it for a while, but I think I'm gonna change it.
Think of the money.
We're done with this bit. There are games that launch with the promise of DLC expansions. There are freemium live service games that want your money piece by piece, even in the sport genre already with Konami's eFootball. But there's a reason I haven't mentioned that much or pitched that as an idea for the NHL series, even though I do think it'd be even easier to do with the NHL series considering it's just one league that they need to get the rights for. Something that's the biggest hurdle for eFootball to grow even bigger. But let's move away from freemium because I don't know how many people really love that model. There's a genre that's quite often placed right alongside sports titles. If you're the Video Game Awards and you're not really interested in either of these two genres, but you probably still have to have their presence at the show. In the time that EA has released the 25 NHL titles that we have gone through, Sony and Polyphony Digital has released just 6 main entries in the Gran Turismo racing series. That is an average of about 4 per year if my TMU math checks out. And yes, they have released prologue games in between, but those have always been for people who simply can't wait to play the full featured upcoming title. It's directly stated in the title and it's marketed as a work in progress. But their development plan though, the aim at least, provide a fully realized, fully upgraded model every 4 years. From there, release optional upgrade packages every few months that are priced accordingly, all while building the next truly new model in the background, allowing curiosity, interest, and most importantly, trust to build organically over those 4 years. I'm not out here to say that Gran Turismo is also a perfect game. And trust me, I know racing games are not a perfect formula for fans or developers either. Look as far as Forza and what's happening with Turn 10 Studios sadly right now. But I do think that sports games and racing games have a lot of overlap as far as what they're really offering from year to year or month to month in those upgrades. So I leave you with this thought. What would a 4-year EA NHL series newspaper look like? In fact, scratch that. What would the back of a 4-year EA NHL box look like? That's if we removed 75% of the legal text and brought back a list of features to showcase this once every 4 years. To me, not just a game that's purchase worthy, but one that begins to renew the promise of those 4 iconic words.
It's in the game.
Woo! Okay, real moment here. Thank you if you have reached this point of the video. Honestly, a lot of work went into this. As you can see, you know, Connor and I, man behind the scenes, we built a whole new set for this. Specifically, at first at least, we'll have something else that takes place in here coming up too, but you know, we did all the building just for this. But again, I just wanted to thank you for watching the video, and if you liked it, please like it, because I would love to kind of spend more time making these bigger projects, trying new things, but it helps if, you know, you guys liked it and you support it. You know, that's enough of my panhandling in this one. But it does help us if you share the video and like it or comments on it. All those things. To any developers who might be watching this, because you already kind of showed that you watched other ones, I do hope that you understand the utmost respect for how much work it takes to build video games. I'm so curious as to what you in the comments actually do think of this, because there's so many different ways that, you know, things could really go. Down in the comments, let me know. I will be in there for this one in the comments. I am going to be reading stuff. So if you have any lovely feedback, terrible feedback, you hated it, I'm going to read all of it because I appreciate all of it. So yeah, thanks for watching.